Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this 23rd episode of Season 2 of Good Questions with Cameron Dole. Special guests for this episode include Ira Rosen. The former producer on 60 Minutes has a brand new book, Ticking Clock, behind the scenes at 60 Minutes. We'll also visit with writer and filmmaker Chris Johnson. Got a new hybrid documentary, Journey to Royal, a World War II movie we'll be talking about. Of course, if you would, please take the time to subscribe, drop a like, comment, leave some feedback, and of course share with your friends. Well, before we get to the guests, there's a couple of stories that I came across this morning. Thought we might share these with you today. Like this one. If you're going to fake an excuse to take a day off of work, you've got to at least try to stick the landing. Now, there's a 20-year-old woman named Roberta Clark, works as an electrician in Scotland, and last Tuesday, she was at a baby reveal party, texted her boss that she couldn't make it into work because of the snow. Well, then a few seconds later, she meant to text a friend a picture of a huge bottle of champagne she was about to open at the party, but she accidentally sent that picture to her boss instead. Now, she did apologize, and amazingly enough, her boss seemed okay with it, and he told her that he'd see her tomorrow. And to that, many of us say, oh, if only I had a boss like that. Well, let's go ahead. Our first guest is going to be talking about a brand new book called Ticking Clock. Behind the scenes at 60 Minutes, producer Ira Rosen. First off, Ira, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, listen, thanks so much for having me.
Now, you talk about Ticking Clock behind the scenes at 60 Minutes. I mean, Ira, did you always know that there was a book to be written in your work?
Absolutely not. I mean, I was focused on the job. I was focused on telling stories at 60 Minutes. I never really thought I would end up writing a book. But over the years, I had a lot of idle time on airplanes and in various boring meetings. So I began to take notes, and I kind of put them away and gathered the string. And then when I retired, I kind of decided, why do I want to be selfish and keep all these stories to myself? Maybe people could learn something from them or be inspired or whatever. And I kind of wanted to put it all out there, warts and all, if you will.
And for you, what do you think is the biggest misconception whenever folks knew that you were on 60 Minutes working? What do you think is the biggest misconception about the process of making 60 Minutes?
I think a lot of people think that, producers have preconceived notions and that you go in with, that you're out to get somebody or whatever. And I think the best producers I've encountered are ones that keep an open mind. There was a producer I worked with who I admired and learned from named Joe Wershba, who was one of Edward R. Murrow's original producers. And he was in the movie Hello, Good Night with George Clooney and Robert Downey. He was portrayed in that. And, Joe did a story once on this guy, Max Hugel, who was a counterintelligence head of the CIA who kind of got run out of town by the Washington Post. And Joe could have done the story, Max Hugel is a bad guy. But Joe didn't. Joe took Max's side and talked about maybe this guy got railroaded wrongly. And maybe that was part of the experience of what Joe had gone through during the McCarthy period, where people were getting falsely accused. And I appreciate that. And the best journalists look at whether somebody is getting falsely accused and give them their due and look at that. So I think that's a big misconception.
And through the time that you spent working at 60 Minutes, I mean, how much did your vision of what was news and what was newsworthy, how much did that change over the span of your career? Well,
newsworthiness changes based on the time you live in. I mean, today, certainly you would be doing stories about the pandemic or what happened in the Capitol. You 10, 15 years ago, you would not. There were a few people who did the story about the coming plague or something, but it wasn't certainly foremost in your mind or your thought about it. Some people had the vision to do that story. I doubt the book or the article sold very well. But, we used to call those scare stories. But, hey, it's a reality story. And I think that's where you have to sort of have the courage to take on a subject like this. And one of the stories, that I took on that I was really proud of was the opiate epidemic, which I collaborated with the Washington Post, won every award in the business. And it wasn't like we're doing a story no one else had done, but we're telling a story in a way that hadn't been told before. So people for the first time really understood how corporations and Congress contributed to the spread of the opiate epidemic. And the story, when it aired, it resulted in the future drug czar of the U.S. Basically being eliminated, if you will. He withdrew his nomination.
And Ira, what do you think it is that sets some of the folks that you worked with as storytellers apart from just a news delivery person, if you will?
I think the practice of telling stories, among friends, at dinner parties, in bars, to colleagues. The art of storytelling is something which is a practiced art. You just don't say, friends of mine who recently retired say, hey, I'm going to write a novel. And you just don't sit down and write something, sure, but it's not going to be a book I want to read. It's kind of like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. So it's the same way. You need to try out things. You need to try stories out. The great comedians like Robin Williams, when he was alive, used to play his act in small little nightclubs where no one could hear, and he'd try out the jokes. And, that's what storytelling is about. You write it down on a piece of paper, you show it to people, you get some criticism back, and so you kind of go from there. So I think that's what makes some of these great correspondents great storytellers,
And again, the book, Ticking Clock Behind the Scenes at 60 Minutes. Ira, I want to make sure and let folks know where they can find more about the book and everything you've got going social media-wise as well.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's on Amazon right now, and, I'm not quite sure all the places I'm going to be in the near future, but I encourage people to buy it because it's a book written for people not who are just interested in television, but who are interested in kind of good stories.
That's right. Well, Ira, I've been a big fan of your work for many years. Truly appreciate having some time with you this morning, and hope you have a great rest of the week, and hopefully we'll catch up again real soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.
Well, again, thanks, and check out that book, Ticking Clock, from Ira Rosen. And, here's a story for you. If you thought it sounded boring watching YouTube videos of other people playing video games, not exactly sure what you're going to think of this. One of the big new YouTube trends is watching random strangers study. Yes, it's a video of someone sitting there for hours at a time just quietly studying. And they usually don't even acknowledge the camera. Now, the trend started in South Korea, but has spread to other countries, including the US. So why do people like these videos, you might ask? Well, one, some people like to put them on while they're studying or working so that they feel like they're not doing it alone, and can even get motivated if someone else is working hard. Number two, someone else is struggling to study can also be a reminder that you're not the only one having trouble with work, so again, it's motivational. And three, some people just like them for ambient noise. I guess it feels like being in a library, which can help you get in the right mindset to focus. So yeah, the hottest new YouTube trend, watching videos of strangers silently studying. Our next guest is writer and filmmaker, has a hybrid documentary available now, Journey to Royal. We visit today with Chris Johnson. First off, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Oh, Cameron, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, Chris, tell us where this story for you, and I know this has got a personal flair to it as well. When did the idea for the documentary and being involved in it, when was that something that first came to you, if you will?
Well, this it first happened during family reunions back in the day. Royal's widow would attend family reunions occasionally, and when my cousin, who is Royal's grandson, and the spitting image of him, would also show up, she would be moved to tears, and we couldn't mention Royal's name around her because she became inconsolable, and I was struck by this emotional, this response to the absence of this individual 65 years on. And it got me to wondering, who was this person that wasn't in our family anymore, that moved this woman to tears like this? And so as I began to investigate the history about my great-uncle Royal and his service in the military, I knew that there was a gap in our family, this hole from his absence that needed to be filled somehow. And so the idea, I've been in the film industry my entire adult life, and so the seed was planted to somehow fill in that gap in our family chain by making a picture about it. And it was originally going to be a narrative feature, but when the producer on the picture, Mariana Tosca, and we found the last surviving crew member of Royal's crew. And when we had interviewed him, it became very, very clear that the story was the veterans and that they had to tell their story. And so that's when the hybrid feature film documentary format became apparent to us, that's how we had to tell this story. Let the veterans tell their story in their own words, and then amplify the tense moments of the rescues and some of the events they went through during the war with these dramatizations that drops the audience right in the planes with them in the open ocean on a B-29 as it's going down. So that's the history of the picture, essentially.
Now, for you, what is the biggest challenge, especially with the times we're living in right now, getting the word out and also getting the final production finalized and something that you're happy with, if you will?
Well, Cameron, as we all know, these are some trying and strange days, and we worked through the pandemic last year doing the post-production, the finalizing of the edit and the color correction and the sound mix. And those are challenging aspects to a picture under normal circumstances. But when you're working through the added barrier of COVID and COVID protections and things of that nature, it made it very, very challenging. And in fact, it delayed the release of the picture. The picture was supposed to be released on the 75th anniversary of the events depicted in the film and the end of World War II. And because of everything that's been going on in the world, we, along with innumerable other pictures, got pushed back until this year. But it was a challenge. But we knew that there was a finite amount of time to get this out in a timely fashion that would have meaning regarding the end of the war and the events depicted in the film. So we just did our best to stick to it in the safest way as possible, and we got through it.
Now, how much pressure did you put on yourself personally and professionally, dealing with it being such a close knit story to you personally?
Well, the pressure. At the beginning of this project, producer Mariana Tosca and I, we made a promise to these vets that we were going to preserve the legacy of their stories and do everything we could to get them out into the world. And so the pressure wasn't so much self-imposed in terms of, doing a good job and doing all the things that you'd want to do as just a competent practitioner of your art. The pressure really came from living up to the high bar set by the sacrifice of these veterans we were talking to. These are amazing people, and I know your father had a career in the Air Force, so you have an idea of the kinds of sacrifice and dedication that these people commit themselves to. And so we we just felt that we had to, at the bare minimum, live up to that. And then everything we could do beyond that, that was within our power. Of course, we were going to apply ourselves to make it as high quality and compelling narrative as possible. Their stories in and of themselves are compelling. But our job as filmmakers is to be true to that in a way that is, accessible by audiences who may or may not have the same affinity for the subject matter. So we're hoping to be able to bring audiences of all spectrums, to ask them to spend 90 minutes of their time hearing about what these amazing veterans did in the service of saving lives in World War II.
And Chris, were you surprised how much color was still left in the stories as they were being relayed to you, even after as many years had passed?
Well, that was something that, despite knowing it, it always took you by surprise. We would be sitting across interviewing these veterans, and it was as if their stories had happened last week. And the heart of these people, it just envelops you, and so you become, in a way, part of the story. It's difficult to put into words the way that space in that room has changed when they begin to relay their story, because they're not anecdotes of everyday life. They're stories of perhaps some of the worst, most trying times of many of these people's lives, and it's still emotionally raw. They still remember the losses of loved ones and friends, and the stakes. They're still vividly aware of the stakes that were at play during that global conflict, and that's what comes out when they're speaking their stories. And in many cases, their family has asked to be there because, as I'm sure you can imagine, many of these veterans haven't shared their stories before because, well, obvious reasons. It's not something that they did for honor or glory. They did it because they needed to set the world back on the right path.
That's right. Now, Chris, if folks want to find more information about where they can find the documentary and everything you got going on social media wise as well, where's the best place to hit that up?
Well, we have an official website. It's journeytoroyal.com. And on that website, you can find under the Watch drop-down menu all of the places the film is streaming, where you can purchase Blu-rays or DVDs. There's news about the picture, reviews, press. The trailer is on there. The film has an Instagram, Journey to Royal, as well. And you can find both the producer Mariana Tosca's Instagram through that Instagram and the website as well as mine. So everything is on the official website, and we certainly hope people will go there and have a look and give this film a watch. We've done everything we can to be as true to the stories of these veterans as possible, and it's a compelling, moving picture due to the fact that the veterans were so open and forthcoming with us.
That's right. Again, Journey to Royal, a World War II rescue mission. Chris, it has been great to visit with you today. I wish you nothing but continued success, and hopefully we can catch back up and visit again real soon.
Cameron, it's been a real pleasure. I appreciate you spending time this morning, and wish you the best in everything as well.
Again, find him on Instagram or visit the official website at journeytoroyal.com. Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything that you're never going to do again, even after the pandemic is over? Well, there's a new poll that asks 2,000 people, and here are the top 10 answers. Number 1, sharing chapstick. Number 2, taking a bite of someone else's sandwich. Number 3, trying out makeup samples at a store. Number 4 is making out with strangers at a bar. Number 5, borrowing someone else's bathing suit. Ooh. Number 6, using a friend's makeup. Number 7, standing really close to people in line. Number 8, leaving the house without hand sanitizer. Number 9, sharing bags of chips or other snacks with someone you don't live with. And number 10, using someone else's deodorant. And it seems like that might have only made the list because it's something that we didn't do pre-pandemic either. Well, again, thanks for joining me for this 23rd episode of Good Questions with Cameron Dole Season 2. If you ever have a comment, question, or anything else you'd like to know, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at GQ with Cam. If you'd like to help out in the funding for this podcast, feel free to click the support tab and follow the instructions. If you have a special guest idea, email me, gqwithcam@gmail.com. We've got some exciting news to share in the coming weeks. Stay tuned for that and share with your friends. We're going to let Brandon Allen play us out. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday.